You're watching NBC4, Washington's news leader. Now, live in HD, this is News 4 Today.
4:28 is your time now, 77 degrees. The lights of Washington reflecting off in the sky. It's going to be another hot and humid day. Good morning, everyone. I'm Un Yang.
Good morning to you. I'm Joe Krebs.
Terminals by 2 p.m., but many offices were still in the dark into the evening.
Police are hoping that you will recognize a robber. And if you, several minutes ago, felt a bit of a rumble, we are getting phone calls from people throughout the area, from Frederick all the way down to the district and farther south, Upper Marlboro, saying that they felt some sort of a rumble going on. We don't know for sure what it was, but we are checking it out.
And in fact, I felt it right here in the newsroom, but I thought maybe it was construction in the building. We're still checking to see if it indeed was an earthquake or
something. Whatever. We're checking it out. But anyway, if you did feel that, people are calling in, and you're not alone if you did feel that, and we'll let you know what it is as soon as we find out.
All right, 5:13 is your time now, 76 degrees ahead on News 4 Today.
Breaking news to tell you about right now.
That's right. The U.S. Geological Survey is confirming now that there was a 3.7 magnitude earthquake right here in the Washington area. It was centered in the Potomac-Shenandoah region is what the USGS is saying. In
fact, the distances from the center of the earthquake, the rumbler or trembler, the earthquake was about a mile northeast from Gaithersburg, about 2 miles from Washington Grove, 3 miles from Montgomery Village, 3 miles from Germantown, about 19 miles from Arlington, about 20 miles from Washington, D.C. was the center of whatever did occur. It was a 3.7 magnitude earthquake or trembler.
That's right. And we've been getting phone calls, though, from Upper Marlboro, Maryland, all the way to Frederick, Maryland, so you can imagine the strength of the earthquake moving out. Now, we haven't had any reports of damages or injuries at this point, but a lot of people are calling to say we felt the ground shake. And a friend of mine just emailed to say her house in Washington, D.C. shook really hard, and they weren't sure what happened. No damage at this point.
In your friend's house?
Yes, in our friend's house. She lives right in Mass Ave Heights, and she emailed me to say the house shook really bad, and no one knew what was going on. And in fact, we felt a shake right here in the studio and didn't know what it was. And when we were talking about earthquake, I was surprised that we would have an earthquake that we could actually feel right here in Washington, D.C.
In fact, on the telephone right now with us is Jim Lukashevsky, NBC News' Pentagon correspondent. Jim, thanks very much for joining us. Are you calling from home or the Pentagon?
Well, I'm calling from home, Joe, and you know where I live. I'm not too far from Gaithersburg, apparently where this 3.7 magnitude earthquake was centered. And it was actually quite a wake-up call. At first, my wife and I looked at each other and thought my son had our woofer on downstairs. Honest to God, it was audible, and and it started as a low rumble that built to a huge crescendo and then sort of popped, and the house shook and the windows rattled, and we have a guest, my sister-in-law is here in the house, and her first word was earthquake. Fortunately, we took a quick examination as best we could. There doesn't appear to be any damage, but, for this area, pretty unusual circumstance.
Very unusual, and I'm glad that you didn't have any damage out there, and certainly no injuries have been reported so far. But Jim, thanks so much for letting us know. And if you hear from anybody else or you see any other damage or results of this, please let us know.
Will do, Joe. Take care.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you calling in. We could definitely. He mentioned that you could hear it audibly, and I definitely could hear it. It sounded like somebody was moving furniture above us.
And that's what we thought. There was construction or someone rolling something heavy through the hallways, but I wouldn't have guessed. That's why I'm really surprised. It's a first for everything. First time I felt an earthquake.
Let's go to Chuck. Chuck has joined us now with a forecast for weather, at least.
Yeah. How uncommon is this, though? Or how common is this right here in the Washington area?
Earthquakes can and do happen in every location around the world. Nearly every day the ground is never really completely still. It's always moving just a little bit. And, even when there are major earthquakes somewhere else, technically they're registered on the seismographs even here in Washington. That's how they help gauge the size and the strength and the location of them. So it's not completely unheard of, but it has been a while since anyone's been able to feel one. And I can tell you, that's my first time feeling an earthquake as well, and I didn't even know that's what it was. I heard rumbling in the air conditioning vents, and I'm like, oh, it's probably just a mouse. And everybody in the newsroom's like, it's not a mouse, it's an earthquake. So yeah, it's luckily no damage done. That's what we've heard so far. Outside, weather-wise, The weather was unimpacted by the earthquake, and unfortunately, we're going to be just as hot today after the shake as we were before it. So 80 degrees right now.
Apparently, folks. It is on, but we don't hear me. So back to you.
Well, we'll take a look at the traffic when we come back. Jerry's having a little problem with the microphone. Hope the earthquake didn't cause that, but we'll be back with more. Coming up, sports reporter Aaron Andrews fights back
Carter,
against the...
He says, it was stolen from him. Let's go more now on that breaking news, that earthquake that hit the Washington area. Amy Vaughn from the U.S. Geological Survey joins us now on the phone with the latest. Good morning to you.
Amy, are you there? Well, apparently we don't have that phone connection right now, but we're going to try to talk with someone from the USGS. Are you there, Amy?
I am here, yes.
Oh, hi. Okay. Thanks for joining us this morning. What can you tell us about what happened in the Washington area this morning?
Well, right now we have a preliminary magnitude of 3.6, and that occurred near Germantown, Maryland. And as you probably have felt it yourself, I'm guessing, many people throughout the D.C. area, Virginia, and Maryland have been reporting felts through our Did You Feel It website, and even as far away as Pennsylvania. So this is certainly a very widely felt event, and one of the largest events we have probably in the past 25, 30 years in this area at least, if not much longer.
I think a lot of our viewers were surprised by the earthquake. Amy, tell us what 3.6 means. How powerful, how strong is that magnitude?
It's certainly something that people are experiencing and waking up with, as it's kind of the early morning, middle of the night for you guys out there. And it's enough to rattle things off shelves, possibly create small structural damage in terms of maybe cracked windows, maybe some cracked walls or foundations, potentially. The bigger deal is that it's going to be very widely felt more than damaging, though, we suspect.
And would the damage or the impact of this be more closer to the center of where this actually happened, near Germantown, Maryland, or would, as it goes out, does it get bigger as it goes out?
It actually would be focused more intensely at the epicenter there near Germantown in that area. And then as it gets out further, it's going to be felt less and less damaging.
Okay.
And Amy, we're hearing reports of tremors in the area. How long can we expect this earthquake to have tremors, and how long will people expect to feel this earthquake?
That depends. Unfortunately, we can never predict that, but it is typical that aftershocks can follow a main event. Usually aftershocks are smaller than the main event, but that's not always the case. And that could last potentially just today, could last weeks, maybe months. We really don't know what to expect, unfortunately.
Well, we talk about aftershocks. Could this possibly be a prelude to something bigger?
Again, we could never say for sure. Usually, like I said, aftershocks are smaller, but that's not always the case.
And Amy, I think we were all a little taken aback and surprised by this. How common is it to have an earthquake right here in the Washington area?
Well, just looking at some of our historic records, we did a search within about 50 kilometers of the area since about 1974 when we have this particular database, and there is nothing a 3 or greater. We only have, I think the largest would be a 2.6 here back in 1990 in this area within 50 kilometers. So this is pretty significant for your area.
And give us a sense, if you can, of what is the Earth's surface like underground where this occurred, and how much shifting is going on there, and what can we expect?
Well, typically, given that there hasn't been very many earthquakes, in that area of this size, the Earth isn't moving a whole lot, but everywhere on the Earth is potentially subject to seismic activity such as this. It's not completely, it may be rare and unexpected, but not unheard of, I guess is the correct thing to say here. And there are faults that lie throughout all of the continental plate, even within there, not necessarily along the typical fault boundaries you think of, like San Andreas or New Madrid or something. So, there are some faults there that have been created from continental shifting and changing and movement throughout, millions and billions of years. And it just so happens that it appears some of those faults at depth moved, and they're not largely identified in your area as far as we would know. And then also at depth, they don't necessarily resemble what they might look like on the surface if they are a surface fault.
So there's no major fault in this area that would could continue to threaten us?
I'm not the expert on what faults you do have. I'm not aware of any major faults, no. Again, some of the bigger ones that we all know about are more identified and more studied, and I think that we would be more familiar with them if there were something like that. So I don't think that that your area would be capable of producing some of those very large earthquakes. At least I hope not. We all hope not.
Right.
Certainly hope not.
And Amy, what is the USGS doing now in terms of monitoring the situation? Because you said that there's a possibility that we could get even a stronger earthquake in the area in the next couple of days, weeks, or months to come.
Well, there's a possibility. There's not a huge likelihood, but again, we can never predict, so I can't really speak either way. It's just I don't want to have people say, well, you said not so. But we do have 24/7 operations here based at our Golden, Colorado headquarters with the National Earthquake Information Center, and we are monitoring all events that occur throughout the world, including your area. So,
speaking of monitoring events around the world, a lot of people have pointed out it seems like there have been an awful lot of earthquakes over the last year or so around the world, major earthquakes. And the question is something new going on that you folks are aware of, and have there been an abnormal number of earthquakes around the world over the last year or so?
Statistically speaking, we are within the normal ranges. It might seem a little different because, for one, more earthquakes perhaps happened earlier in the year. So, but within a larger period of time, we are within the normal ranges of how many, like greater than 8 magnitude we would expect, greater than 7, greater than 6, and so on and so forth. But the fact that they've occurred in largely populated regions and have been more damaging than usual in more populated areas, those things kind of bring more awareness to it. And so perhaps the larger earthquakes that are happening at depth out in the middle of the ocean still did happen, but no one was necessarily caring about it as much as they do when it happens like that and hurts people and things like this.
Not to mention the proliferation of media, I'm sure. The media around the world, everybody's got a camera on their cell phone, and so pictures are immediately available around the world.
And Amy, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to agree that the greater awareness of earthquakes has definitely led to that question for us many times.
Mm-hmm. And Amy, a couple of things. Can you describe if there is anything that helps cause earthquakes for people who don't know, something in the atmosphere, the weather, the ground? What sort of factors go into the fact that this earthquake happened at this time?
Again, the earthquakes are usually something that happen further at depth. This earthquake is probably about 5 kilometers deep, and that's basically just something that is shifting within the continental crust because, again, the Earth is in motion at all times. Generally speaking, the Earth moves just millimeters at a time, but sometimes the faults build up pressure and release more of that all at once, and so this is something that likely occurred at depth in your area there, below the surface, pretty deep, where you're not likely to see surface fractures, most likely. Again, we can't say for sure, but again, just a large at-once movement that was basically a release of that stress, most likely, within the continental area there, but of the faults.
And is there a website for people to go to for USGS to report something? You probably want to hear information from how far people felt this earthquake. Is there a place where people can email or write into?
Yes, we have a website. It's earthquake.usgs.gov. And there's a thing there that says, did you feel it? And that's where you can report your experience. And it does very much help us know where people experienced it and better understand how this earthquake was experienced by the area and how far and everything.
It would actually be helpful to you in your research to hear from people and to hear their experiences with this.
Yes, plus it's really neat for everybody else to go and see just how widely felt this earthquake was, I think. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, that website has been very helpful to us this morning. Amy, thanks so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it very much. To summarize, it's been a 3.6 magnitude quake that was centered near Germantown, Maryland, and apparently we have not received any reports of any damage. Amy Vaughn did not say that we would expect any damage because of this, but this is the first time in 30-some-odd years that anything like this has happened.
And there is a possibility. She didn't say how strong the possibility was that we could feel tremors and aftershocks for a few days or hours, weeks to come. So we'll be monitoring that situation.
But right now, our time is 5:39, 75 degrees.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.